Welcome to the Confidence Through Health podcast. My name is Jerry Snyder. As a health, wellness, and sports performance coach, my goal each week is to bring you experts to help you take control of your health and build your self-confidence. Thanks for including me today on your journey to better health. As an elite level runner and coach, I'm excited to introduce you to the All In Running Club. The All In Running Club exists to help you become a better runner. Whether you're a beginner, an elite runner, or anywhere in between, the mission of the All In Running Club is to give you the tools you need to find your success in running. Join today to take advantage of the 75% off yearly membership rate offer. Click the link below in the show notes to learn more. Thank you for joining me for episode 187 of the Confidence Through Health podcast. In this episode, I speak with Amish Shah, who is the creator, producer of the film The Natural Law. And it's a great film. I saw it in August when it was released. It's won awards at 6 different film festivals. And we talk about what the film is about, and the film is about his life. We don't go into pieces of the film necessarily, but we talk about his journey to health and the discovery of the Ayurvedic practices that he learned that were a part of his culture and his heritage, but being born and raised in the U.S. was not necessarily a lived out part of his culture. And then he needed it. And he went and discovered how to fix himself in both a combination of the Ayurvedic practices, but also using Western medicine to help narrow down what is actually wrong and causing issues. And now he's living a healthy life, and he's spreading the word about ways in which people can get involved with their own health and understanding their own body through the principles of Ayurveda. So is a great, conversation story. His journey is amazing. So I highly recommend watching the film, as well as once you listen to this episode, share it with your friends, share it with your loved ones who are struggling with their health and are looking for those ways to fix something, but they are just stuck. Just like he was when he finally said, enough is enough. I've got to figure this out. And I know too many Americans and too many people in the world that are at that position right now. And this is a way to fix that, and a way to come in tune with your body and in balance with your body, as he talks about. So great episode. Give it a listen, give it a share, and enjoy. So thank you, Amish, for being a guest on the Confidence Through Health podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Very excited to share what I know about Ayurveda and my journey.
Well, and so I came across you through your film, The Natural Law, that you created, and it is a journey that you documented your journey. And so I want to go into it, but I don't want to spoil the film, right? But but it's something that I'm going to say it now. I'll say it at the end. Like people need to go watch this. Like it will change your life and make you think about things in a different direction. But to start off, like one of the things that you openly say is that like you were leading sort of the standard American life when it came to your health and like what you ate. And
correct, yeah.
So Ayurveda came on, but like talk us through like that like finding like there's no outlet, there's no release here, so I've got to go a different direction.
Exactly. That is kind of what ended up happening. And again, not to ruin the film, I'll try to fill in the gaps beyond the film. And so growing up, I always had like stomach aches, and I'll get like bloody noses and headaches all the time when I was a kid, and go to the doctor, and doctor's like, here's some Pepto-Bismol, take some Tylenol, here's some lotion for the eczema. Like nothing's wrong. Just go home.
Yeah.
So that's what I did for the longest time. We just normalized it as a part of it being normal kid stuff growing up.
Right.
And then so as I got older, when I was 19, 20, I got vitiligo actually. And vitiligo is a extreme lightening of the skin. So I have a little bit of a darker shade of skin, and imagine having like a white spot, like right here, and I had another dark spot, like right here. And again, went to the doctor. They're like, oh, this is vitiligo. It's an autoimmune condition. We don't really know what causes it. And I'm like, you don't know what causes this? Like, okay. So you could put a steroid on it, or you can do a UV therapy, which I ended up getting UV therapy, but it didn't help. And so that was it. And then I was working a full-time job. I was just kind of in my 20s at the time. I had a good job for what I thought was good. I was working in New York City. It was an hour and a half commute each way to work through the trains, the subways, and
Right.
I had to go to Brooklyn or I had to go to Manhattan, Midtown, which is pretty far in. And I was living in Jersey City at the time, so I had to cross the border and
Right.
make my way there. So that lifestyle led to the point where I was just like, man, I can't do this anymore. I got to figure out a way out. And growing up as an immigrant son, it was always just like, you got to be the best. You got to make money.
Oh,
You're
right.
not going to end up like us, right? Don't be poor like us. And I grew up with not a lot and
Yeah.
confused between the Indian, like my parents are from India. So, growing, like I was born and raised in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
But I had this Indian culture,
Right.
in the background. So I was trying to be like this kid who was eating pizzas, pastas, and burgers. But then I'd go home and they would be like, cooked vegetable with spices and like a lentil soup and like rice and like a completely different meal, right?
Yeah.
And so as you get older, you move away from home and you start eating kind of whatever you want. And so I was doing that. And like I said, I had the ambition of being something bigger. So I started tinkering online. I wanted a side gig. This is in the early 2000s. So I got into it. And before I knew it, I made $1 million. Like, no joke. Within like 2.5 years, 3 years, it was like, but I was just like, holy crap. Oh my God. Like, so I quit my job. And within 5 years after that, went from $1 million to $10 million business.
Nice. Yeah.
And so from New Jersey, from a 2-bedroom townhouse, driving an Acura RSX, or sorry, an Infinity at the time, which was a decent car.
Yeah.
And I ended up in 2008 or 2009 in a 6,000 square foot house in La Jolla with a pool on the roof, a theater room, and an elevator. And I had a Ferrari, a Maserati, and an Audi.
Nice.
And before I knew it, because of my lifestyle, I was partying, I was drinking, I was stressed out from the company, I was staying up late, not sleeping properly. I hit rock bottom. I was depressed, suicidal. I didn't know what was wrong with me.
Right.
So I just went to the doctor, as any normal person would do. After going to the doctor, they told me nothing's wrong with me. And I'm like, well, something is wrong. They want me to take pharmaceuticals. And I was just like, there's got to be a better way out. Like, and to put things in perspective, my lab reports were so off that the office was shocked. Like, it was like, you have to come in immediately because this is not normal. My cholesterol as a 29-year-old was 370.
Oh, wow.
I had fatty liver. I had pre-diabetic, and I was like, I'm 29. Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Of course, I started, I was in pain. I was getting massive migraines at the time. Had this pain in my stomach that was just nonstop, backaches, sinus infections. And I was just like, what is going on? I didn't want to live anymore. I was like, man, what did I make all this money for? Like, I just didn't understand what was going on. So I went to specialists after that. I went to ENTs. I went to, I got MRIs, I got CAT scans. I mean, I got X-rays, I got ultrasounds. I was like, this is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. I'm telling you, like, I'm in pain every day. Something is wrong with me. Yeah. And after every test, they're like, nothing is wrong.
Wow. And
so I was just struggling. I didn't know what to do.
Even though your numbers were off the chart as far in the wrong way, like they still couldn't figure out. It was just like, nope, okay, and they just wanted to throw pharmaceuticals at you to mask the symptoms.
Exactly. And so around that time, I got into like meditation. I just wanted to eat healthier. I wanted to cut out all the alcohol and just generally just get healthier, right? In general, I just wanted to get healthier. So I went down the path of just the basic stuff, infrared sauna, rebounder. I was juicing, that was, this is around 2010, 11, 12, around that era. And so that was what I did. And so granted, I was losing weight, I was looking better, but I was still in pain.
Right.
So that wasn't going to work for me. So I started to kind of just look into other modalities. So I was doing acupuncture. And I was so inflamed that they put the needles in me and the needles would pop back out. So that's how much fluid was in my body that was being retained because it didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So I was actually getting sicker. And so that led me to Ayurveda. It was in my lineage. My parents didn't actually know much about it, to be honest with
Okay.
you. They just knew that celery seeds with salt and turmeric and a little bit of ghee is good for your tummy when you get tummy aches. Like that,
Okay.
that's what it's good for. Or,
Yeah.
oh, you can't go to the bathroom, here, take this concoction. Oh, you sprain your ankle. Let's put a turmeric salt paste around it instead
Yeah.
of like putting a Band-Aid or what we do, like Bengay or whatever,
Yeah.
something. So it was a very different approach to medicine or just the normal everyday household things. If I
Right.
was sick, they would make me golden milk, which is turmeric, salt, and milk, basically.
Right.
And this is in the 80s,
Yeah.
So this is before now golden milk is like a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it was funny growing up in that household too, where it's like, okay, well, why can't I just take like this grape Robitussin? Like that's what
Yeah.
everyone else takes. That's what the commercials say.
Right.
So, and anyway, I'm going to fast forward now.
Well,
I
but
did,
so they
yeah,
knew sort of like the handed down generational stuff, but not
generation stuff,
necessarily
how
like
it works.
quote unquote medicine man knowledge of how this works.
Exactly. They didn't know how. It was just like my mom told me this, or her grandmother told her, and
Right.
that's it. It wasn't like this has this property, that's why it fixes this problem.
Right. Right.
It was just like, nope, this is what I was told.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and it's a good thing and a bad thing in a way. And blind faith
Right.
is good and bad in many ways.
Yeah.
There's something to that. And so, I researched a little bit about Ayurveda, and this was in 2012, and there just wasn't a lot of information out there about it.
Right.
There wasn't very cohesive information. It was just bits from certain websites and PDFs and books that I had to buy to read about it. And I was still trying to understand, like, okay, how does this apply to me?
Yeah.
And so then I found something called a Panchakarma, which is a detox retreat that you can go on. And I was like, oh my God, like this is speaking to me.
Yeah.
And they focus on the lymph specifically. So they focus on the lymph and they remove the toxins from your body from the lymph. And I'm like,
Right.
I don't know, but this sounds exactly up my alley. I need to go do this.
Right.
So I went to the retreat and they oiled me up and massaged me, and I had enemas and I was eating a mono diet. And I felt fantastic afterward. I was like, wow. And I was detoxing like crazy. There was
Oh, I'm
just,
sure. Yeah.
and it was, I felt so good. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And because at the time I sold the companies, I decided to push the reset button and everything. I'd invested a little bit of money to film the people who were treating me.
Okay.
So the doctors that were taking my pulse, the ones who were behind the scenes that know about Ayurveda, the teachers at the school. Yeah. And so I started interviewing just people in Iowa, actually, in Fairfield, Iowa. And I did that, and I was like, wow, this is some fascinating stuff. And yeah. I interviewed some people myself, and I was asking them, and they're like telling me about thyroid conditions that were being reversed and MS being reversed. And I'm like, really? Like, let me just keep filming this documentary.
Right.
And I was like, I'm on my own journey. I get it. I'm in pain. That led me to doing one of these retreats very often, once a year. Mm-hmm. Once I would come home from the retreats, though, within a month or two, I'd start swinging again. I'd kind of hit this bottom, and I'd get the migraines, sinus infections, and my digestion, diarrhea, constipation. I just didn't know what to expect. It was horrible. So again, like while I was thinning out and feeling better, it was like a slow creeping up of my symptoms kept kind of getting worse. It was crazy. So Ayurveda was keeping whatever was happening to me at bay, but in between it was like boom, 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 right?
Yeah.
And so at around 2016, 2017, I hit rock bottom, and I just said something's inside of me trying to kill me, like quite literally. I've been on this journey. I was filming all the Ayurveda doctors, and I'm listening to everything they're telling me, but it's something's still wrong with me. So I went on this one last trip to India in 2017 to do some more filming, and also just on a quest to just ask for something or someone or the Ayurvedic wisdom to heal me, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And so I actually went to a startup conference at the time, and there was a there was a startup there that was doing genetic testing for diseases, but specifically epigenetic profile
Right.
of diseases that sit in your DNA.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I want to do that. So they took a swab, and I'll never forget this. 2018, January of 2018, I get the results, and they're going through my report, and they're going through all the diseases.
Yeah.
Thyroid, diabetes, and heart disease runs in my family. So they're like, oh, 1.4 likely X to get it or expressed. But
Right.
with exercise and diet, and you'll keep that at bay. So I was like, okay, great. Then we're going down, blah, 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 nothing's wrong. Boom, celiac disease she gets to.
Yeah.
And she says 5.6X likely expressed.
Oh, wow.
Now, celiac is an extreme aversion to gluten. It's beyond an allergy. It's beyond an allergy. It's like, and so for 38 years of my life, I've been eating gluten and drinking and, beers and pizza and whatever else. And I had no idea that this was like the slow death of me, basically.
Yeah.
When I found out, I had 8 ulcers that were going on in my intestine. Yeah. And so what was happening was I had leaky gut, malnutrition, and the villi in your intestines just flattened out and died.
Right.
So there's nothing to absorb any of the nutrients. It was just in and out, basically. And I was just, you could see it. My face was like white. It was like turning like black, like dark, It was just, you could tell I wasn't vibrant anymore.
Right.
My left eye stopped working. A lot of this I didn't mention in the documentary either, just because of how we had to edit it,
Right.
So it was much worse than what the documentary made it out to be. And I was nearly bedridden, quite literally. And 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, I was in bed. I had to lay down. I couldn't function. And it was pretty crazy with a family, at home.
Oh, I'm sure.
I couldn't take care of the kids. I couldn't be present for the kids. They'd come and want to jump and play with me. And I'm like in bed, like just wondering why my head is throbbing, And so, that was a wake up call for me in 2018 when I found out that, wow, maybe this is my chance.
Yeah.
So all of my allopathic doctors, every single one, when they told me that nothing was wrong with me, many of them told me that there was no way I was allergic to gluten. They refused to give me gluten tests even because they said you would be experiencing way worse symptoms. I'm like, pain every day is not.
It's not bad enough.
Migraines and pains in my back, like I don't understand, So when I would go to see my Ayurvedic practitioners and my Panchakarma specialists, who was a detox retreat specialist, and the doctors, they're actually MDs too.
Right. And
I'll tell them, and they'd be like, "Oh, are you allergic to anything?" I'd say, "No." They told me I'm not allergic to anything. So even through my Panchakarma and through my talking to my Ayurvedic practitioners, we never addressed that because I was like, that's not a problem for me.
Right.
And so there I was, boom, it hit me. And I started working with an Ayurvedic practitioner when I found out specifically, like we figured it out. Now it's time, let's repair the ulcers, let's go in, because you kept me healthy-ish along the way, but something was just still hitting me,
Yeah.
And so I did that. I cut out gluten. Within the first 30 days, I started feeling better already. Just by cutting out the gluten, I was like, oh my God, I think this is it.
Yeah.
60 days, obviously, and I followed a very strict diet, like a FODMAP diet, which is, it removes anything that's inflammatory out of your diet. And I had to do that to repair my gut, to repair it from scratch. So I incorporated like bone broths and like ghees and lentils and rice and, cooked vegetables, cooked greens, bitter foods. I took a lot of supplements like turmeric, ashwagandha, triphala specifically was amazing. And I was taking this throughout the years, but just more intentionally now, why I'm taking these. And I started feeling better. Like my gut started feeling better within 6 months. I had to cut some things out that I enjoyed, like such as coffee and some dairy and things like that. But it was so good for me to do that. And now I've slowly started to reintroduce some of these things, which is beautiful about Ayurveda. Is everything's in balance. And by the time so I just to rewind a little bit and give context is 2017 when I got that last piece of footage and I found out what was wrong with me. I was done with the documentary. I was like, we're not finishing this thing. I was like,
Really?
I'm done. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I need to heal my body. Um, so I actually put the documentary aside for like almost 3.5 years.
Wow.
And in 2021, I was meditating or just sitting in silence, which I like to do. I find it brings me very peace and
Right.
reduces stress. And so it hit me that, oh my God, I was happy. I was healthy. The business was good again. My relationships were good again. I felt good about myself again. And that I had to finish this documentary.
Right.
We had filmed Deepak Chopra. We had filmed Dr. Vasant Lal, Dr. Mimi Guarnari, like Sahara Rose, Peter Crone, like the who's who of Ayurveda around the world.
Right.
Literally 40 something people. And I was like, oh my God, like we do have to finish this documentary. Like
Right.
it saved my life.
Right.
Quite.
Yeah.
And it brought me back to the people that I witnessed that it healed as well. So stage 4 cancer, MS, autism, ADHD. And I'm listening to these stories of these people who are there at these centers and at these conferences. And I'm just saying, why is this not out there in more? And I want to talk a little bit about Ayurveda and what it is, because people are probably wondering, like, well, what is it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So Ayurveda comes from India, ancient India. It's over 5,000 years old. And what I tell people is that the reason why it's survived over those 5,000 years is because it's been time tested.
Yeah.
And the truth is timeless.
Right.
Something doesn't last eons or decades or even centuries. In this case, centuries upon centuries upon centuries. It doesn't last unless it works or there's truth to it.
Right.
So Ayurveda has been around in the Indian subcontinent, tested across billions of people across thousands of years.
Yeah.
They cataloged 9,000 plants. They have 25,000 recipes for different ailments that occur in the body. They have 8 categories of medicine, from psychiatry to immunology to pediatrics, geriatrics. They had surgery. So modern medical system is actually based on this to some extent.
Right. Yeah.
And they took it from, somewhere, and they had to create these categories. And so Ayurveda is the oldest, most comprehensive ancient medical system on the planet that's still decipherable, that says, oh, you have this problem, let's just plug it with this and this will be your protocol.
Right.
And it's so fascinating. So fascinating. High blood pressure, diabetes. And I'm listening to these case studies and I'm like, what like, I can't believe this. So, we are in the middle of this interesting world where industrialization has changed the quality of our foods.
Yeah.
There's pesticides on things.
Right.
There's eating organic is now more important than ever, actually. Non-GMO, because GMO doesn't just mean that they're making it bigger and juicier and why not have more for your money. They're actually tinkering and tampering with the genetic structure to have that pesticide within the plant.
Right.
So now you can just spray more on top of it and it's already in the plant, right?
Yep.
So we have to think about what we're doing to our bodies at the same time. Our bodies don't recognize these things.
Right.
And so in modern world, the ancients knew that something like this might happen, because at one point, what they did, it was just village to village.
Yeah.
So they would just teach it and everyone was generally healthy. But when people got sicker and sicker and sicker, they're like, wait a minute, we need to create a compendium of wisdom and gather it from all of our different tribes. That's kind of what they did over time.
Yeah.
And there is a basis to all of it. And that is what the movie is called. It's called The Natural Law. It's like an algorithm, basically. Yeah. It's a computer program written into nature. That's really
that's basically,
And so what we have in nature and within us, because we are born in and of nature.
Right.
we are nature. And sometimes we tend to put ourselves outside of nature. It's like, no, your parents conceived and you were born. And guess what? You need to have nature to fulfill you. You got to have them to fulfill you. You need this nature around you. We are one with nature.
Yep.
And so within the natural law, there are 5 elements. Those 5 elements are ether, air, fire, water, and earth.
Right.
And ether means space. Everything has space. Like this is empty space, supposedly, that I'm waving my hand around. Right. We have space in our stomachs. That's how food gets in and expands, right?
Right. Yep.
Air is the next thing, right? We have air that we're breathing in going into our lungs. We have clouds that make air. We need air, right?
Yep.
Fire, right? Fire there's this huge big ball of fire in the sky that powers our whole entire universe, quite literally, or at least our galaxy, or at least our planetary system.
Right.
And it gives us our food and our nutrition, and we need the sun. Without the sun, we're dead, right?
Yep.
And why is our body 98.6 degrees, average? Well, it's because we have some kind of fire or heat inside of us. It's this mechanism that produces heat inside of us.
Right.
So that's fire. Water, that's a simple one. We're made up of water, 70%, and so is the earth. And we have planets that are like frozen, water, and water exists in the whole entire universe. Yep. And then we have earth, right? We have structure. Well, how come we can see the planets? It's because they have structure. How are we just erect and we have bones and we have fingers? Well, that's structure. We have some kind of earthly structure to us that we can move around in. Right. So these 5 elements of space, air, fire, water, and earth, they combine together to create physiological forces. Right. And so when you combine ether and air, you get movement. Yeah. And anything and everything in the universe is moving. My hand is moving now. Food moving in my digestive tract. There's ants crawling on the ground. We're moving at, I don't know, thousands of miles per hour around the galaxy, right? We're constantly in motion. Yep. And you take fire and water and you combine those, you get transformation, right? What happens when you boil water? When you heat it up, it turns into vapor. It disappears. Right. And so that's transformation right there. Fire and water. When you combine those two, we have transformation. We eat food, it goes into our digestion. It doesn't come out the same way. Right. So it was transformed. It gave us energy. It turned into enzymes, proteins, all these things that we need for our body turn into energy. So that's fire and water. And again, in our real day, every single world, I have this light in front of me and it's plugged into the wall. Well, this electricity is coming from somewhere and being transformed into a light. And it's everything is constantly transforming. Right. The seasons are constantly moving along and transforming. Yeah. And the last 2 that we combine are water and earth. Now, water and earth produce structure, right? When we have structure, that structure is, well, why are we not just a puddle of water on the ground? Right. Well, because we have structure. We have ligaments, bones, we have muscles, we have tissues, we have our skin, we're an organism. We have structure to us. Tall buildings, skyscrapers, look at them. They're 90, stories high, hundreds of stories high. They have structure. They have good structure that holds them in place. There's structure. And so when we have movement, transformation, and structure, those 3 are called doshas. Yeah. And movement is vata in Ayurveda. Transformation is pitta in Ayurveda. And kapha is structure, water and earth. Okay. Now, what they say is that everybody has all 5 elements and everybody is made up of all 3 doshas. Mm-hmm. The plants are made up of certain combinations. You're made up of a certain combination. I'm made up of a certain combination. But we all have slightly different amounts of these 5 elements and these 3 physiological forces within us. Right. Now, that was given to us by our parents at conception. So whatever their doshic makeup or their elemental makeup was at the time of conception is who you became when you came out. Right. And at the time of conception, you had this specific doshic makeup. Now, when we come out of the womb and we live our lives and we're hit by these outside forces of food, environment, toxins,
Right.
stress specifically, and massive sensory input that we take in on a daily
Yeah.
basis nowadays, our body doesn't understand how to process all of it.
Right.
And so what happens then is that that stress turns into disease.
Yeah.
It turns into a pathological reference, you know?
Right.
So all these different things that we bring in through our senses, including food and all of it, is what creates disease in the first place.
Right.
So what Ayurveda says is when those elements or those doshas or those, you know, movement, structure, or transformation get out of whack, we just gotta move those things. We gotta move those levers a little bit, and we'll put them back into place. So it's quite simple, and the way they do that is through the natural kingdom,
right?
The natural world. They take plants, they take herbs, they take lifestyle adjustments into place, you know. And I'll never forget one of the doctors that I interviewed. And they go, a Western doctor would say, okay, what's wrong? Oh, I get massive migraines and my stomach hurts and I don't know what's wrong. Okay. Like, you know, you got to fix up your diet and here's some pills and off you go to the next patient.
Yeah.
She told me as an Ayurvedic practitioner, because you ask questions about their lifestyle, one of their patients was so simple. She was drinking 17 sodas a day.
Oh my gosh.
So she goes, stop drinking the sodas and see how you feel, instead of giving someone a pill. Now, things that just that simple can change people's lives, right? So it's the system is broken, and we just need to reframe it a little bit. And so Ayurveda, the way it worked for me was that my Ayurvedic practitioners kept telling me that my pitta, my fire, my constitution of pitta, that balance was off. Yeah. And that was showing up as anger, and that was showing up as heat in my body, and like go and like you know, just drive and like let's go, like I'm up for a fight, you know. Yeah. And I had stress, immense amount of stress from the business and my relationships, and so that's vata, that's anxious energy, that's fear, and so that was fueling these two things together, and that was giving me ulcers, and that was causing that epigenetic reference to happen in my body at a massive scale, basically. Right. And I wasn't taking care of the root cause, which was gluten. Right. So when I fixed all of that up, I was like, holy crap. And so that's how Ayurveda works. And so we look at everyone in a different way. It's very unique to the person. Right. And so that's where it's like, okay, well, if this person is doing this with their life, and I want that for my life, I need to do that, what they're doing, but that's not necessarily going to work, because you have to fit to your dosha and what you were given. And like some of that may work, but like it's not, and that's probably where we get off. Like, and I don't want to blame things on like, I know there's a lot of things that can be blamed on, like on Ford and how they started the assembly line and made things so like everything's so easy to create. Pop. Yeah. But now it was the Industrial Revolution, to be honest. It was everything, food and all of it, you know? So and that made it so simple to be like, oh, we can just do this. And then, you know, a pharmaceutical works for somebody. Oh, let's do it for everybody. Yes. Where it's like you said, like if you just ask the question and go like, oh, well, you're working 20 hours a day and you're stressed out and that's causing us. Why don't you try stop working so much? Yeah, and I think that's important. For, you know, we stop, slow down, we ask questions, and you know, Ayurveda, they say a couple of things, that there's no bright doctors, only brilliant patients. Oh wow! Yeah. And it's because the doctor has communicated to all of his patients how to live healthy, happy, preventative lives, or how to get rid of your disease, how to clear out anything that's happening. So the wisdom of the doctor is to educate the community. It's not just to fix the problem that's happening, but it's actually to change and transform the community so that they don't have any patients, right? Right. Yeah. And in our world, it's like a way different situation. It's like, I got to see 90 patients a day. That's how many patients I got. And it's like, so there's a lot of things that, you know, Western medicine does provide too. So I don't want to make this like big pharma's bad. Right. And, you know, Western medicine, allopathic medicine is the devil. And it's not that. It's not that. You know what? You get hit by a truck. You have a heart attack. you have some acute thing happen to you, you collapse, you have a stroke, like that is not the time to look for an Ayurvedic practitioner to
Right.
wonder about your doshas or maybe my dosha's off or something.
Yeah.
No, go to the hospital, go to a trauma
Yep.
center, use the pharmaceuticals, get pumped up with morphine, whatever you
Right.
need,
Yep.
get it, because
Yeah.
that's where Western medicine is phenomenal. You have a
Right.
broken arm, you have a broken leg, go get acute care. We need that. We
Yeah.
need that in this world. But autoimmune type conditions, chronic metabolic disorders, Ayurveda is so useful. It's about
Yeah.
integrating these two systems together
Right.
and understanding the ancients and why they put this together. We're just now starting to discover, some of the things from Ayurveda: turmeric, shilajit, holy
Right.
basil, neem, ashwagandha,
Yeah.
right? These are herbs that we have in today's world. Like, oh, I love that tea, or I put that in my smoothie, or that's already in my smoothie, or that's in my drink already.
Right.
It's because these things work.
Right.
They knew this for thousands of years, and they knew that if you use this for this specific ailment, it's even better. It's amazing. And this is the quantity, and this is how you take it.
Yeah.
So if they knew that, what else did they know?
Right.
Panchakarma. Here's another example. That detox retreat that I go to religiously once a year, I have to go.
Yeah.
Guess what? There is scientific evidence now that just 7 days of Panchakarma, I believe it's between 5 and 7 days, reduces the toxin level count in your fat cells by 50%.
Oh, wow.
Reduces the toxins in your fat cells by 50%.
That's huge.
There's not a herb or a drug or a
Right.
diet that you can
Right.
follow on this planet that will do that.
Right.
There's a
Well,
reason.
and there's a lot of them that you follow that you could lose weight and probably feel the same way that you did. Like, okay, I'm starting to lose weight. I'm starting to trim down, but you're not getting rid of the toxins in that moment.
Correct. Yeah.
And so those toxins just stick around and they're eventually going to cause problems again.
Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of Ayurveda, is that they look at things from a mind, body, spirit perspective.
Mm-hmm.
How's your mind? How are your emotions? What's going on?
Right.
Let me dig in a little bit. Where are things off in your life? One of the biggest things of Ayurveda, what they say, is only treat unhappiness.
Oh, wow.
Only treat unhappiness. Oh man, this thing is bringing me a pain. Well, okay, let's treat that. But what else is going on? What's making that pain really flare up? What's going on in your life?
Yeah.
So only treat unhappiness, and that's a beautiful statement. It's that we want to make them happy. We want to make the person happy. So the emotions, number one. Physical body, for sure. They're really, really good at that. They're also really good at figuring out the mind. And then spirit. What's your connection to yourself?
Right.
What's your connection to everything that's going on? Do you like your job? Do you like what you do every day? Do you like going home? What else do you like doing? Do more of what you like doing. Do you go to your job every day being like, just like, well, that's going to catch up with you. That catch up to you and turn into something.
Yeah.
So Ayurveda knows that the connection to yourself and your purpose and why you're here is very important, and you have to follow that. And that was important for me too.
Yeah.
I was this high flying entrepreneur. I was on stages. I had software platforms. I had a big following, and this is pre-social media. This is the internet. Yes, but pre all the influencer kind of world. I was the influencer before influencers.
Yeah.
People would come to my seminars, and I'd pack out 600 people at the seminar, and then and I was living that whole life, and I had this amazing software platform, but it just wasn't who I was. I wasn't that person. And I got caught up in that world,
Mm-hmm.
And what I found out through that the hard way is I'm supposed to be bringing this wisdom to the planet. I'm supposed to be teaching this to the future generations and the doctors and many others, because this works, and we're discovering that it works. So how do we integrate it into healing humans and humanity as a whole? Right. And so I think that's the bigger mission for all of this.
Right. And so, well, one of the things that you that I remember from the movie was a quote in like when I watched it, I told you beforehand, I took a bunch of notes and definitions and like writing all these things out. But one of the quotes I wrote down was, to eat is human, to digest is divine, right? And so and that hit me because that just, I don't know how many people I've helped as a health coach that hit, and people that I haven't been able to help because they come to me and they but I just love to eat so much. But I just, you're going to make me eat all the things that don't taste good. And I'm like, well, that's not necessarily how it's going to work. But if you have that mindset already, that sort of fits this, to eat is human. But if you can get past that and go oh, but to digest is where it's at.
Mm-hmm. In Ayurveda, everything focuses on the gut. They say that the gut is where two places where disease starts, the mind and the gut.
Yep.
And outside of the mind and the gut, that's where literally everything starts.
Yeah.
So what you consume, what you put in your mouth, the minute it hits your tongue in Ayurveda, it's already started to send signals from your tongue to the glands in your organs to secrete enzymes to start breaking down the food. It's like, hey, stuff's coming down. You get ready. You got to start putting this stuff through.
Yeah.
If your digestion is slow and sluggish and not working like mine was, because I had celiac, so my digestion was just all over the place. Didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
If you have diarrhea, if you have constant diarrhea, or if you have constant sluggish, slow constipation, it's a signal for you to be alert as to what you're putting into your mouth.
Right.
And so when we say to digest is divine, is having regular bowel movements every single day, and getting it all out at once, very important as well. And so they say anything beyond that to digest, is divine because it means everything.
Yeah.
And if we don't digest properly, what happens, and we're just, again, this is new science according to our Western system, but Ayurveda knew this, is that stuff gets left behind that doesn't get digested. It just kind of sits in your stomach and sits in your intestinal tract, and it doesn't move. It just gets lodged, literally just gets lodged in there. And what happens is the lining of your intestinal tract can't take it anymore because it's like, man, this thing is just poisoning me. It's not moving along the track anymore. So what it does is it starts seeping through. It starts finding its way through your intestinal tract and through your stomach. And guess what? It starts finding its way to the weakest area of your body. Mm-hmm. That's called leaky gut.
Right.
And we now, for the last 15, 20 years, have been paying attention to what leaky gut is in the Western medical system. Again, 5,000 years ago, they knew that that's the cause of disease.
Yeah.
Is that they call it amma, that toxic material, they call it amma. And that amma gets out. And then from there's 6 stages that lead to disease.
Yeah.
And they knew that there's actually 6 stages of that disease. And I was like, what the heck? Like they knew this. This is brilliant wisdom from
it really is
years ago. And so it's so powerful that digestion is divine. If we don't digest properly, it sits there, it turns into disease.
Yeah.
That's what
and it's coming out in the Western medicine is starting to now find these things. And when I tell people that oh, well, this is, have you had constipation? When did it start? If they're seeing that constipation is now a primary key indicator early on of Parkinson's disease, dementia, Alzheimer's.
Well,
so
makes sense.
if you've got constipation in your 20s, guess what? 40 years down the road, that's it's a key. It's so many people that they've traced back down and go oh, I mean, it's 95% of people had constipation in their 20s. And then you go back to your 20s and you go, okay, what were you doing in your 20s? How are you living? How are you acting? And so many of us were we're invincible. We're just going to eat whatever we want, go out, party, drink all the time. And I was there. I mean, I did the same thing, and then it's you wake up, you don't feel good the next day, and you're whether it's a hangover or just that you ate the wrong thing feeling the next day.
Yep.
That constipation is just like you said, because it's leaving that sludge in there to whether it's ferment or to break down and cause all kinds of issues in your gut and get out through the leaky gut system. And when you're in your 20s, you can overcome a lot of that.
You can. Yeah, that's what's great about Ayurveda is that even in the 6th stage of disease, which is the chronic stage, there's options and solutions, which is so amazing.
And
Yeah, and I
and
agree.
that's
When you're young and you don't know, and we're not grown up and we're not taught this,
right,
right?
right.
So it's just like, oh, I can just put whatever in my system and it's fine. And yeah, so
Yep. So now what, when you were looking at like the Western medicine was saying, okay, do this, do this, do this, was it a like a trigger of like, okay, my heritage is coming in, or was it like, okay, none of this is actually working? Like, which was the bigger weight? Because I know a lot of people that don't have, a heritage like that to look back on, and it's
sure.
just going like, I've got years and years of just people taking meds.
Yeah. You know, for me, a lot of it was not really heritage, to be
Yeah,
honest with you. I was just out of options.
yeah,
And it was just like the Western system failed me, to be honest with you.
hmm,
And I thought acupuncture was like, certified and legit because, I did chiropractic. I mean, I went down every route, quite possibly even down psychedelics and plant medicines. And,
yeah,
I went through every experience
yeah,
to figure out what was wrong with me.
yeah,
And I rediscovered Ayurveda, and yes, it is in my culture and my heritage and my DNA to some extent. But again, when I was researching it, there wasn't a lot of information in there, and I didn't understand it really that well in the beginning. Even I was just like, what were those five elements again? And
right,
how do they pair up again? And what makes what again? And what are those names again? And
yeah,
it's foreign. It's different than the way that we think.
right,
It's not how we perceive things. It's a very dynamic, very creative way to look at the human system, but it uses physiological and universal forces and laws
right,
that, when broken, you will experience something that's out of balance.
right,
And so they're the basis of what everything is made up of on the universe. And it's a part of that algorithm that we were talking about, right?
yeah,
It's like, wow, like there is this brilliance to nature that we
yeah,
can't quite understand, right? And nature always wins, no matter what.
right,
After humans, maybe, I don't know if we'll survive or not, or whatever happens,
yeah,
nature's always going to be there,
right,
Moving
yeah,
on, maybe the next generation, there's animals again, dinosaurs, like who the hell knows? But
right,
nature's always going to be there. There's this intelligence to it that we tend to ignore, that there's
mhm,
there's amazing intelligence to nature. And guess what? That intelligence is inside of us too.
right,
When we take things that are not for our body, let's just say we're sick, and Ayurveda is not just for sickness or being sick,
sure,
it's for people who are healthy and want to optimize too.
right,
Like Ayurveda is the original biohacking,
right, yeah,
And so when we're using these things from the outside that may be synthetic, processed, that are not from nature, for example, we're actually not respecting our body's own intelligence.
right,
That we've evolved over millions of years on everything from nature, plants,
hmm,
fruits, and now we're sticking things in manufacturing plants and mixing things together that have never
right,
been mixed, and GMOs, and
yep,
doing things that we've never done in the history of humanity in the
yeah,
last 100 to 200 years, basically.
right,
And it's wild. It's
yeah,
wild. And so this, I feel, is the answer. Ayurveda is there for us to use
yeah,
for these conditions that are unexplainable.
yeah. Well, and that's one of the things that I tell people a lot is the nature piece, and that's why I love that you called it the natural law, because that appealed to me just like, as somebody who says, okay, well, one of the first things you have to do. Yes, there's a food issue. Okay, yes, yes, there's an exercise issue. Okay, yes.
Yeah,
When's the
exactly.
last time you went outside and put your feet in the dirt? Like, when's the
That's
last time
important.
you went outside and listened to the birds? Right. And to go outside and listen to the birds, you first off, you have to shut up yourself. Right. You have to turn your
Hmm.
mind off to be able to be patient enough and present enough to go, I hear that bird singing.
Hmm.
And if you can do that, then okay, now we can start to deal with some of those other things. But,
Exactly.
if we can't slow down, like you said before, if we can't slow down, then we're still going to be on that road. Like we can try some of these, like you did, you can try to eat healthier, you can try to do this, but if we're still out of balance and we can't tell that we're out of balance because we don't slow down enough to figure out if we are or not, we're a train wreck still.
Yeah.
We just may be on a different track.
And there's lots of people who are healthy and sick at the same time. There's a whole demographic of them.
Right. Yeah. And just to like, I know we've talked about it from the ancient Indian standpoint, but like, it's not just something that works with people with an Indian heritage. Like,
no,
this is a human being thing.
This is a human being, and we're all made up from the same nature that, I'm Indian. I'm made from the same nature that you're made up of. It's the same Mother Earth.
Right.
We still have the same organs. We still got the same, everything on the inside. We're the same, basically.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that I tell people when they look at it and they're like, why should I take this vitamin or this herb or this whatever? And it's like, because the cell is the cell. It doesn't like you said with epigenetics, like, okay, well, the cell tells what genes to fire off, and then you look the way you look, right? Your hair color is the hair color you have, whatever it is. But like the cell inside still works off the same steam that everything else, like for every single person.
We have all the same receptors, all of us.
Right.
Some may have more sensitive receptors, but we all have the same receptors.
Right.
What you get from spinach and I get from spinach is probably the same. You might get more, I might get less, and maybe something else might be something else, but we have the same exact things going on inside of us.
Right. So. And I think that's something that people have to stop and think about and understand. And then, the 5 elements, like it, when you're talking about that's just nature. Right. And so again, it just goes back
observable.
It just goes back to that nature piece of like, are you a part of nature? Are you trying to be above nature?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because you're going to be much healthier if you're a part of nature.
One more thing I think I find really fascinating about Ayurveda is that pre 5,000 years ago, it was all passed down orally from family to family traditionally.
Yeah.
23andMe, which is a genetic research company, they did research on genetics and how humans evolved over time and their geographic locations.
Yeah.
Between 25,000 and 45,000 years ago, they have the genetic data to prove that majority of the world's civilization, it's a lot of people, 25 to 45,000 years ago, lived in the Indian subcontinent.
Oh, wow.
Now, that's a big area, of course.
Sure.
But they said majority of the world's civilization, 25,000 to 45,000 years ago. And this is a study done by 23andMe.
Right.
They lived in there. So I imagine that we had all these amazing cultures and all these different kinds of people living together as one utopian society that shared this wisdom. They're like, hey, my child had this and I mixed these two things with that and it worked great. And boom, now it's spread across. And then that's where I believe a lot of this comes from, is when the world was in what they called the golden age. We hear it in all ancient wisdom stories that there's this golden age, So
that's cool. But it does it makes total sense. And one of the things that I tell people, especially when they get married to somebody who's not from their heritage culture is not the same. It's like, okay, well, how come I can eat this and I'm fine, but my spouse eats this and it has these flare ups or they da da da.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, part of that obviously, as we learned, is their makeup, their doshas. But another part of it is like, okay, well, they're coming from a background of eating these things more often.
Exactly.
And so that plays into who they are. And so like, yeah, of course, somebody who's from, got roots from Ireland is going to be able to eat potatoes and maybe not have any effect at all.
Exactly.
And
that's 100% real as well. In Ayurveda, they say eat seasonally and eat locally. So wherever you are, that's the best recipe for you. So,
Yeah.
Yes, follow your lineage. Lineage is important also. But wherever you are, try to eat with the seasons and try to eat with what's locally, like, whatever's growing within a certain distance.
Right.
And, according to your lineage, you try to find those things that will do well for you and work well with you. And the things that won't work well for you, like, for example, in my lineage, my parents didn't eat meat. My grandparents didn't eat meat. And I'm pretty sure my great grandparents and great 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 grandparents, I don't even know how many lineages, how long they didn't eat meat, but I grew up eating meat.
Yeah.
And I grew up eating cheese, which they never really ate a lot of. And so I drank a lot of soda and Lucky Charms, whatever else. And so I've noticed that when I cut meat out of my diet, and I still have a little bit from time to time, it's not that I don't, but it's like when I feel like I need it, I need it. And I think that's the beauty of Ayurveda, is that they don't say don't do it.
Right.
Do it when you need it, when you, and everyone's different. Someone might need a little more protein. Someone might need more carbs. Someone might need something else, So, I noticed that when I eat meat, guess what happens? My cholesterol goes up. When I cut it out, my cholesterol goes down. So my body was not designed over thousands of years to process meat in the same way that someone that grew up maybe in Ireland or the Caucasus Mountains, for example, like, they're able to process meat and potatoes way better.
Right.
So
no, that makes total sense. And I think that's a big key to, like, understanding where you're from is bigger. It's more important than just your culture. Like, those are important things to pass your culture on and everything. But for your health, it's utmost to remember and know, like, okay, I came from a long line of people who did these things. I need to do those things. So, well, we're coming up on, I want to be respectful of your time. We're coming up on an hour. I greatly appreciate you being a guest. Tell people how they can, like, get involved, follow you, learn more about the natural law. I know you've got other things going on as well that you're promoting.
I'll wrap this up with 2 quick takeaways that you can do. One is stop drinking cold water. That will destroy your digestion. Ice cold water, cut it out. Start drinking room temperature and hot water throughout the day. Just sip it throughout the day, and it'll keep your digestive fire, your divine fire that you want, intact. So that's number 1. Number 2, get sleep. Try to sleep by 10 p.m. That's the only 2 things I'm going to doctor you about. The rest is watch the film for sure. And you can get more information at thenaturalllaw.com. I'm sure you'll have a link also in the profile here. And you can follow us on Instagram at Be the Natural Law, because we want people to be the natural law, become one.
That's awesome. Well, I greatly appreciate, like I said, when I saw the film, I was just like floored and just, I mean, it's right on. And from a
10 years in the making. We've won 6 film festivals. I'll mention that as well. It is on a tear right now, and people are loving it, and we're very excited. It's
awesome. And I'll, to throw the disclaimer out, people that have listened to me before, they know, like, I'm a Christian and I'm watching this and I'm like, it's not speaking at it from a religious standpoint. It's speaking at it from a health standpoint. And so put the barriers down and understand that, like, your body's your body. Your beliefs can be your beliefs, and that's fine. But if you want to be healthy, you got to do the things that are healthy in this.
This is not religious by any means.
No, it's not.
It's just wisdom, ancient wisdom, universal.
So I greatly appreciate what you're doing. Keep it up. I think it's beautiful. And in any way I can help, reach out and let me know, because I'm always there to help you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for checking out the Confidence Through Health podcast. Please subscribe, post a review, share this episode with those you love who need a little extra help with their health journey. Visit allinhealthandwellness.com to learn more about the coaching programs that I provide. All episodes are produced by the Social Media Cowboys, your source for all online marketing needs. Go to socialmediacowboys.com for more information.